People all over the world love fireworks. On America's Independence Day, New Year's, and other celebrations, we thrill at the sight of fireworks. In our national anthem, we even sing about the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air. We also know that fireworks, or pyrotechnics, can be dangerous. If you manufacture, sell, display, or otherwise work around pyrotechnics, it is important to learn how to recognize hazards and take the proper precautions. This is why OSHA, America's principal agency for workplace safety and health, has partnered with the American Pyrotechnics Association to prepare this video. It will familiarize you with standards and guidance information designed to keep you safe and healthy while working around pyrotechnics. When it comes to occupational safety and health, OSHA is your best resource. For information and assistance, please visit our website or call your local OSHA office today. But first, let's watch this important video. Thank you.
Fireworks companies, along with those specializing in pyrotechnic effects for concerts, theme parks, and the like, operate year-round, though the vast majority of activity focuses on the 4th of July holiday. Recently, the fireworks industry has experienced unprecedented growth. Fireworks displays have become more elaborate, and retail sales of consumer fireworks for backyard family celebrations have become increasingly popular. Along with the increased popularity comes the greater need to ensure that fireworks facilities operate safely. A host of federal, state, and local agencies regulate the fireworks industry. In addition to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the primary agencies are the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, and the Department of Transportation, DOT. OSHA's involvement with the fireworks industry intensified greatly in the 1980s in response to explosions at fireworks manufacturing facilities. In 1986, OSHA implemented a compliance policy for fireworks manufacturers through a national emphasis program and inspected a series of fireworks manufacturing plants across the country. Information gathered through these inspections was shared with industry and other federal regulatory agencies, initiating changes in practices and procedures at manufacturing sites. Not surprisingly, these improved practices significantly improved the industry loss and injury record. OSHA has continued to inspect fireworks manufacturing facilities, while also responding to accidents occurring at fireworks distribution facilities and fireworks display sites. While the industry loss and injury rates have decreased, workplace safety must be always kept in mind due to the inherent dangers associated with such energetic materials. Industry accidents in 2003, including those in Kilgore, Texas, and Bonita Springs, Florida, occurred during the busiest time for the industry, just prior to the 4th of July holiday. Unfortunately, these were significant incidents resulting in loss of life. While the exact causes and safety considerations of these incidents are not known, they did involve personnel handling product in preparation of displays, inside a magazine or temporary storage vehicle. This video provides an informational overview of safety considerations in fireworks manufacturing and retail sales of fireworks. We will address the primary OSHA standards applicable to the fireworks industry and consensus standards governing the fireworks manufacturing and sales, and industry best management practices with respect to the manufacturing and retail sales of fireworks. First, let's look at some of the raw materials used at fireworks manufacturing facilities. A basic chemical mixture used in many types of fireworks is black powder, the original gunpowder developed over 1,000 years ago and still used in numerous types of devices as a propellant and explosive material. Black powder is a homogeneous mixture of potassium nitrate, or saltpeter, blended with sulfur and charcoal. It comes in a range of grain sizes, from a fine powder used to make fuse to a material that resembles kernels of corn in size that is used as a propelling or lift charge in large aerial fireworks. Black powder is commercially manufactured and shipped to fireworks manufacturing facilities. It is not manufactured on-site by fireworks companies. Flash powder, or salute powder, is an explosive composition that is produced at some fireworks manufacturing facilities. It is a blend of energetic oxidizer, typically potassium perchlorate, with an energetic metallic fuel such as aluminum powder or an aluminum magnesium alloy known as magnalium. Sulfur may be added as an ignition sensitizer. Salute powders are used to produce audible effects. They are very sensitive to ignition and therefore extremely hazardous. Other basic ingredients or starting chemicals in fireworks compositions include oxidizers, fuels, binders, and color or spark-producing agents. Examples of standard fireworks chemicals are listed in the American Pyrotechnics Association Standard 87-1, Standard for Construction and Approval for Transportation of Fireworks, Novelties and Theatrical Pyrotechnics. These chemicals also appear in Annex C of NFPA 1124. DOT approves and classifies fireworks and pyrotechnic devices before they can be transported or offered into commerce. Fireworks are classified based on the weight of chemical composition. Consumer fireworks, classified by DOT as 1.4 G explosives, and assign identification number UN0336. These devices are regulated by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission and are legal in varying degrees for citizens to purchase and use in most of the 50 states. Consumer fireworks include devices such as firecrackers, sparklers, bottle rockets, Roman candles, cone fountains, and small reloadable aerial shell kits which include a launching tube. Consumer fireworks were formerly known as common fireworks. Display fireworks contain larger amounts of pyrotechnics and are classified by DOT as 1.3 G explosives and are assigned the identification number UN0335. These devices are used in most public fireworks displays. The most commonly used device in fireworks displays is the aerial shell, rising into the air from a mortar to produce a burst of color, noise, or combination of these effects. Typically, aerial shells range in size from 2.5 inches to 12 inches in diameter, and occasionally may be found in even larger sizes. Display fireworks were formerly known as special fireworks. Pyrotechnic devices are used professionally in the entertainment industry for concerts, movies, and theatrical productions. They are sometimes called special effects and are known as articles pyrotechnic or indoor pyrotechnics. These devices, such as gerbs, mines, and airbursts, are similar in weight to consumer fireworks and are normally assigned a 1.4 G or 1.4 S classification by DOT with identification numbers UN0431 or UN0432. OSHA's Explosive and Blasting Agent Standard 29 CFR 1910.109 applies to the manufacture of pyrotechnics. Although this standard contains no specific requirements for fireworks manufacturing, 29 CFR 1910.109 subjects manufacturers to the requirements of OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard for Highly Hazardous Chemicals 29 CFR 1910.119, more commonly known as PSM. This standard applies to the manufacture of pyrotechnics regardless of the quantity of pyrotechnics involved. As such, PSM is OSHA's primary regulatory tool for the fireworks manufacturing industry. The fireworks manufacturing industry commonly uses contract personnel for various aspects of its work. PSM contains provisions that apply to contractors performing work on or adjacent to a covered process, in addition to fireworks manufacturers' own employees. In addition, other OSHA general industry standards may apply to specific hazards. These will be identified later when we discuss those specific hazards. The primary consensus standard for this industry is the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 1124 Code for Manufacture, Storage, and Retail Sales of Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles. Although not referenced in OSHA standards, this code contains comprehensive industry practices that are routinely updated and coordinated with federal regulations. You will find that NFPA 1124 has been adopted by many state and local jurisdictions. The manufacture of fireworks and pyrotechnic articles is regulated in part by ATF because it involves the use of explosive materials like black powder and salute powder. Fireworks manufacturing facilities are licensed and routinely inspected by the ATF to ensure proper storage, separation, distances, and limits on quantity. ATF also regulates the importation and storage of display or professional fireworks. For fireworks facilities, manufacturing operations present the greatest industry hazard and potential for loss and injury. Common operations at a fireworks manufacturing facility include receiving cartons of imported fireworks, preparing those fireworks for use, and repackaging those fireworks into shipments for specific fireworks displays or consumer fireworks retail sale, receiving, storing, and then distributing fireworks to other dealers for future resale or use in displays, blending of the starting chemicals to produce star composition, salute powder, fountain composition, and other mixtures for specific applications. Manufacture and assembly of aerial shells or pyrotechnic devices. A fireworks manufacturing facility will have a variety of different buildings, including mixing buildings, where explosive or pyrotechnic compositions are blended. Process buildings, where fireworks, pyrotechnic articles, or components containing explosive or pyrotechnic compositions are manufactured. Shipping buildings for the packing of assorted display fireworks or the loading of display fireworks into vehicles. And storage buildings where consumer fireworks in any state of processing are stored, but in which no processing or manufacturing is performed. Mixing is performed in an isolated area and may either be performed manually or mechanically in a mixer of some type. A mixing operation involves the input of energy, and it can involve sizable quantities of pyrotechnic composition. Due to the possibility of fire or explosion, non-production personnel should carefully coordinate entry into a mixing room or outdoor mixing area with the facility operators. Once blended, pyrotechnic compositions are either taken to another area for further processing, or they are placed in an approved storage location. In addition, you'll see non-process buildings such as office buildings, warehouses, or other buildings or areas located at the manufacturing facility in which no fireworks, pyrotechnic or explosive composition, or pyrotechnic articles are processed or stored. PSM may apply to these non-process buildings based on their siting in relation to process buildings. Potential hazards in fireworks manufacturing processes should be identified and steps established to minimize the hazards during a process hazard analysis, or PHA for short, that manufacturers must perform as part of their OSHA-required PSM program. A checklist based on the comprehensive provisions found in NFPA 1124 can be a starting point for manufacturers to develop PHAs. Other components of PSM applicable to the fireworks manufacturing industry include, but are not limited to, safe work practices, training of personnel, mechanical integrity, and emergency planning. We will now cover specific OSHA requirements and industry best practices. For each, we will delineate the applicable OSHA general industry standards and some of the more specific NFPA provisions. Facility siting is one of the mandatory components of the required process hazard analysis. A primary consideration here is the separation between facilities for the protection of employees. NFPA 1124 and ATF regulations contain tables with guidelines for separation between process buildings and a variety of other facilities. Bulk solute powder is treated separately in these tables because these materials are deemed to be high explosives. With the exception of the electrical and egress standards discussed below, OSHA has no standards directly applicable to process building construction. Some of the NFPA 1124 considerations are: no cracks or crevices in floors or work surfaces in any building. Mixing and loading buildings for solute powder should also have conductive floors and work surfaces. Process buildings, maximum 1 story in height. No basement or subfloors. Seal openings and joints to prevent dust spread. Minimize horizontal surfaces where dust can accumulate. Provide explosion relief. Weak wall, roof, or vent that will give easily in the event of an explosion, and faces away from the other process or storage buildings. Note that the construction of storage buildings and magazines is addressed in 29 CFR 1910.109. The means of egress in all buildings must comply with 1910 Subpart E, which allows conformance with certain provisions of the 2000 edition of NFPA 101 Life Safety Code as an alternative. The guidelines in NFPA 1124 are even more restrictive for process buildings and include at least 2 remotely located means of egress from every individual area larger than 100 square feet. 2 means of escape from each room larger than 100 square feet in a process building, which contains divided rooms. Maximum of 25 feet between every point within a room or undivided area in a means of egress. Exit doors opening in an outward direction and capable of being pressure actuated from the inside. OSHA has no directly applicable standards for static discharge in these facilities. However, NFPA 1124 provides some specific guidance, including conductive floor and work surfaces in mixing and loading buildings for solute powder, conductive footwear or other grounding techniques for personnel wherever exposed solute powder is present, a means for discharging static electricity, usually a grounded touch plate or rod, at the entrance to any mixing, pressing, or loading buildings where solute powder is exposed, and use of this by all entering personnel. Grounding and bonding of mechanical devices such as presses that are used in the vicinity of exposed pyrotechnic or explosive material. Non-sparking machinery and tools where practicable. Non-sparking covering for ferrous metals where practicable. 1910 Subpart S contains OSHA's electrical requirements. These requirements in general apply to facilities involved in the manufacture of fireworks. In particular, 1910.307 addresses hazardous classified locations, which include atmospheres containing combustible dusts. Wiring, devices, and heating equipment located in buildings that contain exposed composition must meet these requirements. NFPA 1124 contains these provisions: prohibition on stoves, exposed flames, and portable electric heaters in any building where fireworks or fireworks components are or may be present. Limitations on portable lighting equipment. Master electrical disconnect at the point where power enters the fireworks plant. Separate master disconnect for emergency circuits. Perimeter signs reading "No smoking, no trespassing." On-site smoking limited to certain areas of certain buildings. Designated area in a non-process building for disposal of smoking material. There are no specific OSHA standards for lightning protection in manufacturing facilities. However, NFPA 780 standard for the installation of lightning protection systems may provide helpful guidance. Although its scope does not include explosives, manufacturing, or magazines, Annex K contains guidance on protecting these facilities. The level of PPE usage is determined in part through the PSM process hazard analysis. Further, 1910 Subpart I contains PPE provisions such as eye, face, head, foot, and respiratory protection. Depending on the process hazard analysis, flame-resistant garments may be necessary. This is likely in areas with flash fire hazards. An additional industry consensus standard which provides guidance on protective clothing is NFPA 2113, standard for the selection, care, use, and maintenance of flame-resistant garments for protection of industrial personnel against flash fire. This outlines a hazard analysis similar to PSM's. When the hazard analysis does not require flame-resistant garments, NFPA 1124 contains a minimum provision for cotton or similarly protective clothing for employees working at or supervising mixing, pressing, or loading operations. It also requires that other protective clothing shall be worn as needed. 29 CFR 1910.22 contains broad general requirements for workplace housekeeping. NFPA 1124 contains guidance specific to fireworks manufacturing, including prompt cleanup of spills using approved methods, immediate removal of cleanup materials, prompt destruction of waste, explosives, or pyrotechnic material using approved methods, separation of waste explosives or pyrotechnic material from rags, combustible scrap, and paper, marked containers for rags, combustible scrap, and paper, daily removal of disposal containers from buildings, regular removal of disposal containers from the plant. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard 1910.1200 requires a written hazard communication program. Additionally, the Hazard Communication Standard requires fireworks companies to train their personnel on the hazards associated with the chemicals present at the facility. MSDSs must be available, and all containers with pyrotechnics mixtures prepared on-site must be clearly labeled with its content and the hazards. The guidance in NFPA 1124 for maintenance of chemical records is a minimum of 3 years for consumer fireworks manufacturers and a minimum of 5 years for display fireworks or pyrotechnic special effects. OSHA's requirements for portable fire extinguishers can be found in 29 CFR 1910.157 and includes employee training provisions. Specific guidance in NFPA 1124 states that extinguishers should not be permitted where exposed pyrotechnic or explosive mixtures are present. Fireworks facilities are required by the PSM standard to have an emergency action plan that meets the detailed requirements in 1910.38. For example, employees who have been designated to use fire extinguishers under the emergency action plan must receive training on how and when to use extinguishers. NFPA 1124 additionally recommends that employees be instructed to abandon firefighting efforts if the fire involves explosive or pyrotechnic composition, or in the event that the fire is likely to spread to such areas. Now that we've looked at fireworks manufacturing facilities, let's turn to consumer fireworks retail sales facilities. PSM does not apply to retail facilities. For these, OSHA must instead rely on its applicable general industry standards and its General Duty Clause, Section 5A.1 of the OSHA Act, which requires employers to provide a place of employment which is free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to its employees. Provisions of pertinent consensus standards such as NFPA 1124 may be used to demonstrate industry recognition of hazards. OSHA's general industry standards, which may apply, have already been discussed in the manufacturing section earlier. In this section, we will concentrate on some of the basic guidelines for retail sales of consumer fireworks in NFPA 1124. NFPA 1124 classifies retail outlets in two main categories. The first category is permanent buildings and structures, either stores that only sell consumer fireworks or those where fireworks are sold with other general merchandise, such as in a big box store like this one. The second category is temporary structures, including tents, stands, and canopies. Note that these structures also must comply with state and local laws and must have the permits required by those laws. Further, some facilities are not covered by the scope of NFPA 1124 if they have minimal quantities of consumer fireworks for sale. Some of the NFPA 1124 considerations that apply to all retail sales facilities are as follows. Siting, construction, and separation distances. Note that building codes may be more stringent in some jurisdictions. Fire department access to within 150 feet of the structure. Fire extinguishers, types, and locations. Signs, fireworks, no smoking at each entrance. Also within 10 feet of every aisle containing fireworks in general merchandise stores. Number of exits. In some cases, 3 may be necessary. Special egress arrangement and travel distance limits, including no dead ends. Exit marking and emergency lighting. Display shelving, barriers, flame breaks, and packaging. Limitations on electrical, heating, and cooking. NFPA 1124 may be consulted for more specific guidelines on these provisions. Note that some provisions differ depending on whether the facility is new or existing, and whether the facility is open to the public. In addition to the common features we have just discussed, NFPA 1124 contains provisions applicable only to permanent buildings. Automatic sprinkler systems for new buildings over 6,000 square feet. Automatic sprinkler systems for existing buildings over 7,500 square feet. Fire alarm systems. Under certain conditions, smoke and heat vents that are activated automatically by a smoke detection system. One fire extinguisher must be watertight. Minimum 48-inch clear aisles. Fire safety and evacuation plans. Whether consumer fireworks are sold in temporary or permanent structures, operating a safe and clean store is of the utmost importance. Here are the major considerations and safe practices for operations. All means of egress, including aisles and doors, must be maintained in accordance with 1910.37 to allow prompt egress. The housekeeping requirements of 1910.22 must also be met. Again, provisions specific to retail sales of fireworks are contained in NFPA 1124, including no fireworks stored within 5 feet of any public entrance to any type of enclosed building or structure. For exits and private entrances, that limit is 2 feet. No fireworks discharged within 300 feet. No smoking permitted within 50 feet. Removal of any pyrotechnic composition immediately. Sweeping with brooms, brushes, and dustpans made of non-sparking materials. Cleaning without vacuum cleaners or other mechanical cleaning devices. Safety training for those employees whose responsibilities include the handling of consumer fireworks. Maintenance of inventory records on the premises, where they can be made available to authorities upon request. That's an overview of the safe practices for retail sales of fireworks. As we've seen throughout this video, attention to OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard, OSHA's General Workplace Safety Standards, NFPA's Industry Consensus Standards, and safety practices developed by the fireworks industry have all become fundamental to protecting employees and the general public.